Thank you guys for coming to my channel. In this video, you'll be learning about adverbial clauses of condition. I was actually supposed to upload this video yesterday, but my phone got stolen for the second time in the past week, and I'll tell you guys all about that. But how are you guys doing today? What are you thankful for? Today I'm thankful for the Find My iPhone feature, because if it wasn't for that feature, I don't think I would have found my phone yesterday. Luckily, when my phone got stolen last week, I was able to hunt the person down and find it that way. I didn't use the Find My iPhone feature that time, but this time I definitely did, because my phone got lost in a certain area, and then I looked for it and couldn't find it. So then later when I got home, I got on my MacBook and used the Find My iPhone feature, and it traced my phone to this house, but my phone wasn't actually in that house, because sometimes the location isn't accurate, but the phone is in that area. So the first time I went to the house, I knocked on the door. Nobody answered. I don't think anybody was there. Kind of looked in the area to see if the phone was there. It wasn't there. Called the police, but they were receiving a lot of calls, so I didn't know when they would show up. So I was like, whatever, I'll just get a new phone. But then later, I was looking on the Find My iPhone feature, and I noticed hours later, my phone was still in the same spot. So I was like, you know what? I think that phone is somewhere in the area, not in the house. So to make a long story short, I ended up going back to that neighborhood to look for my phone one last time. And a passerby, it was this dude that lives in that neighborhood. He was walking in the grass, and I noticed that he stepped on something, and he was picking it up. And I was like, hey, is that a phone? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, what color is the phone case? Because my phone case is pink. And he was like, it's a sparkly pink. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my phone. And the rest is history. So yes, I'm just thankful to have gotten my phone back twice within the past week. It's crazy that people are still stealing phones in 2026. You can't do anything with it, so why are you even stealing? But yeah, guys, let me know how you're doing, or let me know what you're thankful for, or you can even drop a fun fact about yourself. In the meantime, let's get to the video. An adverbial clause of condition is a dependent clause that modifies verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. An adverbial clause of condition acts as an adverb, and it tells us what conditions need to be met in order for something to happen. I always like to make sure you guys know what a dependent clause is, because this is important. Dependent clauses are also known as subordinate clauses. A dependent clause can have a subject and a verb, but it isn't a complete thought. Not every dependent clause has a subject and a verb, but most of them do. So here's a few examples of dependent clauses. Our first example says when the food is done. So there's a subject, food, and a verb, is, but this isn't a complete thought. Our second example says because of the terrible weather. Notice how there's no subject or verb, but this is an incomplete thought, so it's still a dependent clause. And our third and final example says until you complete your homework. So notice how there's a subject, you, and a verb, complete, and this is an incomplete thought. Words we use to create an adverbial clause of condition: if, unless, as long as, provided that, and whether. So we're going to start with if. So our first example says, if you clean your room, you can play video games. So our adverbial clause of condition is if you clean your room, and it's modifying the verb play. Our second example says, if it rains today, I'm not going to the beach. So our adverbial clause of condition is if it rains today, and it's modifying the verb, not going. And our third and final example says, if you braid my hair, I will give you money. The adverbial clause of condition is if you braid my hair, and it's modifying the verb will give. Well, that would be considered a verb phrase because it's more than one word. Next, we have unless. So our first example says you will get cavities unless you take care of your teeth. So the adverbial clause of condition is unless you take care of your teeth, and it's modifying the verb will get. Our second example says you won't graduate unless you get all of your credits. So our adverbial clause of condition is unless you get all of your credits, and it's modifying the verb phrase won't graduate. Our third and final example says your clothes will remain dirty unless you wash them. So our adverbial clause of condition is unless you wash them, and it's modifying the verb phrase will remain dirty. Next, we have provided that. So our first example says provided that you do your chores, you can go to your friend's house. So the adverbial clause of condition is provided that you do your chores, and it's modifying the verb phrase you can go. Our second example says I will buy a new phone provided that I have enough money. So our adverbial clause of condition is provided that I have enough money, and it's modifying the verb phrase I will buy. And our third and final example says I will listen to your side of the story provided that you tell the truth. So our adverbial clause of condition is provided that you tell the truth, and it's modifying the verb phrase I will listen. Next, we have as long as. So our first example says you can go in my room as long as you don't touch anything. So our adverbial clause of condition is as long as you don't touch anything, and it's modifying the verb phrase you can go. Our second example says as long as you're respectful, we won't have a problem. Our adverbial clause of condition is as long as you're respectful, and it's modifying the verb phrase we won't have. And our third and final example says I will pay you as long as you do my hair. So our adverbial clause of condition is as long as you do my hair, and it's modifying the verb phrase I will pay. Next, we have whether. So our first example says whether you like it or not, you will clean your room. So the adverbial clause of condition is whether you like it or not, and it's modifying the verb phrase you will clean. Our second example says Taylor Swift is going to perform whether it rains or not. So our adverbial clause of condition is whether it rains or not, and it's modifying the verb phrase Taylor Swift is going to. Our third and final example says whether I'm present or not, you still need to respect the nanny. So our adverbial clause of condition says whether I'm present or not, and it's modifying the verb phrase you still need to respect. If the adverbial clause comes first, you must put a comma after it. So our first example says provided that you do your chores, you can go to your friend's house. Our second example says as long as you're respectful, we won't have a problem. And our third example says whether you like it or not, you will clean your room. So notice how after each adverbial clause of condition, there's a comma. And that's because the adverbial clause of condition is at the beginning of the sentence as opposed to being at the end of the sentence. If the adverbial clause is at the end of the sentence, you don't need to use a comma. So our first example says you can go to your friend's house provided that you do your chores. Our second example says we won't have a problem as long as you're respectful. And our third and final example says you will clean your room whether you like it or not. So notice how in each example, the adverbial clause of condition is at the end of the sentence, so we don't need to use a comma. That concludes our video. Thank you guys for coming. If you found this video informative, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, or all of the above, and I'll see you next time.